Welcome, everybody, to another edition of IPJ, the podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Gonzalez, and what a week it's been with the story that broke in regards to the Merced PD officer and a Norteño gang member. Now, we're still trying to confirm all the details, but there is something going on that the Merced PD doesn't want you to know about. I was contacted by my source, a former MPD officer themselves, who had been told about what had happened approximately 3 weeks ago by other department officers there at Merced Police Department. The officers saw that there was obviously a cover-up taking place, and they're pretty sick of all of it, but the politicians aren't standing up for them. This has happened many times before when I have been reporting on corruption and other news in Merced, California, Merced County for that matter. For instance, the David Burkhart murder. That was when back in, March 9th of 2018, David Burkhart was supposedly shot while playing some sort of a shooting game. Absolutely wrong. The shooting game that he was supposedly involved in would have had him take the weapon and shoot himself. The autopsy report showed, in fact, there was no way that could have happened. From the angle of the gun, he would have had to have somehow been able to get that gun behind him and shoot upwards at an angle. And to the side, it was just a very, very odd and no way it could be done shot. We even had someone on the show with a gun to show that the shot was very difficult. Of course, the gun was unloaded. We verified everything before. But yes, it was very interesting to show that, in fact, this was a murder and not what they had claimed, an accidental shooting. The worst part about it, though, was that Merced PD did not report any of it to you. They did not report it to anyone. In fact, again, it was an officer who comes forward and is, once again, it's somebody on the inside of law enforcement that sees things aren't being done the way they should be done and steps up to the plate and delivers the information to the media. But the media won't listen. So Merced, Sunstar, ABC 30, all these other channels, they don't listen, and they're a corporate entity. Their whole job is to make money. They don't want to rock the boat. Now, if it's chief comes out and says, yes, this is what happened, of course they're going to report it. But they don't do what reporters should be doing, and that is digging into the actual facts and not accepting what you're being told as fact, if that's the case. So, for instance, with the David Burkhart murder, they didn't say anything to the public, tried to cover the whole thing up. When we finally got it out into the public, the police department, Captain Bimley West, whom I've spoken with many times, in fact, I recorded our conversations at his permission, and they've aired on my show before. It was an obvious cover-up. And no one has done anything. Murder is there's no statute of limitation on murder. We know what happened. We know the person that was there with the gun, and we know what happened. But they refused to listen. Just like up in Mariposa County, again, another law enforcement agency that covers up murders. I say murders because if you all recall, many, many moons ago, Deputy Ron Van Meter of the Mariposa County Sheriff's Department, an upstanding and fine deputy, was murdered by his own department because he wasn't going to sit by and let the bad apples screw up the whole pie. Unfortunately, because our entire state is corrupt, he literally went to the Attorney General's office with all the information proving that the department was involved in drug running, rapes, and murder. And the Attorney General, as Deputy Van Meter was coming back to Mariposa, the Attorney General at the time called up Sheriff Boss Hogg. That's what they called him. Carl Page or something like that was his name, or Paul Page was his name, or is his name. I think he's still alive. I don't know. Anyways, the Boss Hogg up there called him up, and yeah, that night was Deputy Van Meter's last night on this earth alive. They found him like almost 10 years later under a houseboat owned by one of the sheriff's deputies there. And he was apparently tied down or weighted down with cinder blocks, fire extinguishers. And nobody cared. Nobody did anything. And so when Ronnie Cole, 19-year-old Mariposa resident, went missing and supposedly drowned in the Merced River in the Bryceburg area, Mariposa sheriffs, they didn't do anything. Why? Because the people involved, one of the main people, we believe, is very close associates with the sheriff, friends, small town. And if you look at the autopsy report from the independent pathologist, she verified that Ronnie died with no water in his lungs. And she stated, there's no way you can die with no water in your lungs in a raging, river like that. Also, the clothing he still had on. There's no way he could still have on certain clothing that he had on. She questioned that he was ever died in drowning in the water. And in fact, a theory was put together that he was actually murdered beforehand, put on ice in a freezer. We also verified a witness who saw the people gathering up gallons and gallons of ice cubes out of the pizza factory there. And 8 days later, his body is found decomposed and all kinds of stuff. But apparently, he was then put into the water after the search was over. He was put into the water, and that was it. He supposedly drowned. So, people, this is murder. This is the most serious of crimes, and no one cares. Why not? Why haven't all of you demanded answers from your local governments, your Merced City Council, David Burkhart? Why has no one been prosecuted for that? Is it that the person involved could be maybe an informant? Because that's what was the case up in Mariposa. Apparently, the people involved, at least one of them we could confirm was an informant, so much so that she literally tried to kill her own husband. And because she was an informant, they let her go. They dropped all charges and go back to what you're doing and give us information. So, could this also be the case with David Burkhart's murder? Is that why they're not telling you anything? And could that be the case with the story that broke this past week? If you look online at the Merced County Sheriff's Department's inmate roster there, or whatever you want to call it, you won't find him. At least I didn't. I typed in Edward Ramos III. I did not find this guy anywhere. I typed in his first name. I typed in his last name. I typed it all. Not in their system. How is it that a guy who has been arrested over and over and over and over and over again, and you're not seeing his picture mugshot up on the Sheriff's Department website? It leads to certain conclusions. Is the sheriff also conspiring with the Merced PD to help keep this guy on the streets, to keep victimizing? Is he so critical, possibly in investigations, that this person, they don't want anyone to know what occurred? And again, that wouldn't make sense because he was raided, so why would they raid somebody that they're relying on? you know there's a lot of speculation that can be had. We don't know. There's too much leaning on this story being absolutely true. Now, there might be some little facts here that are mixed. I don't know. Also, something very important to point out, the only time we've ever heard that this story was false was not from the sergeant I spoke with, Sergeant Drum, was not from anyone that I called and left messages with. It wasn't from anyone who, because nobody called me back. No one sent me an email. No one saying absolutely not false, absolutely false. No one sent me an email saying absolutely false or anything like that. So no one called me, no one sent me an email or anything like that saying it was false. Only time I received information that this is false is from that letter. And that's it. So once I get a person saying, who's apparently representing one of the people saying that this is false, then, we need to retract, we need to relook and ensure that all aspects of the story are correct before moving forward. In our story as well, it was alleged that this person was involved and that it was alleged that these situations happened. So until we know and can confirm for sure, we have a source who has stated to us that these things allegedly happened. So you don't want to try to step on freedom of speech because the Constitution's a motherfucker. So I wanted to discuss more about Ronnie Cole tonight and talk a little bit more about his case as the anniversary of his passing came up in this June. But of course, this other story took its place. As well, I wanted to inform you that I'm going to have a special guest coming up in March on the anniversary of Mr. Burkhart's passing. And we're going to keep highlighting these two people and their families and how the city's government have just completely shut them off because they don't want you to know. Again, David Burkhart, no one was ever informed. There was no media release, nothing put out about a man being shot in a home. It was complete hush. As well, with Ronnie Cole's passing, there's so much there as well with the no water in the lungs and the way his body was. So much there. It just takes people willing to do the right thing and open these cases up and solve them and give justice to the families. Then remove all the bad apples who were involved or retrain them. I don't know how you're going to retrain a politician though. And get people back on the right track to doing the right thing for the people, by the people, because the people pay the damn taxes. So that's going to do it tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell. And remember, folks, at IPJ the podcast, it is your voice. So use it.